Well, it's a warm welcome back to the Uxbridge FM History Show. And our usual guest, Ken Pearce, is here. And he has a story today about collecting train numbers. Good morning, Ken. When you're
Good
ready.
morning. Thank you. Yes, I'm afraid this is a bit of my personal life, but I hope it will be of interest. In the period around about 1940, many boys in their lower teenage years, like me, had started to collect the numbers on steam locomotives and enter them in an exercise book. Of course, it was wartime, bomb time, blitz time. They were boys who lived near the main railway lines, of course, and since I lived in Uxbridge, at the end of only 2 branch lines, there were only a few trains a day. However, in the school holidays in 1943, some of my classmates invited me to play cricket with them at West Drayton. It was only a rough schoolboy game with no refinements, but anyway, I caught the little GWR push and pull train at Vine Street station here to join the others, and at the end set off home again. But at the station I had to wait for some time, and so I watched the trains for a while. Express trains roared through at great speed, and I could see the locomotive numbers very clearly. A goods train came slowly through, pulled by a powerful old locomotive. Local stopping trains buzzed in and out, while small engines slipped around between West Drayton and the branch lines to Uxbridge and Staines. I was interested. I was hooked. And I decided to collect train numbers, to quote the phrase then used. So I began going to West Drayton regularly, noting the numbers roughly in a notebook and entering them neatly in another book at home. It was all rather disorganized, but at the time I was also noting the locomotive names of those who had them. And then I started to record the shed where each one was based, because there was a small code painted on each engine by the buffer beam, which gave the answer. For example, if an engine had PDN on it, it was based at Paddington Shed. Gradually, my collection grew, as did my enthusiasm. But then, at that time, thousands of lads up and down the country were doing the same thing. One young man saw a commercial opportunity. His name was Ian Allen, and he worked in an office of the Southern Railway. He had the idea of producing booklets for each of the 4 main railways: the Southern Railway, the Great Western, the London, Midland and Scottish, and the London and North Eastern. Each booklet would list all the engines, properly classified, with brief details of each and some photographs. And so he went into production, and the project was a complete success. Young collectors clamoured for these Ian Allen ABCs, as they were called, and were able to treasure the little volumes and underline in ink the numbers of the locomotives that they had seen. Some of my readers or listeners may now be saying, what a boring thing to do. No, it was exciting. It was educational. I concentrated solely on the Great Western Railway, and I began to learn the history of the line, I.K. Brunel and all that. I got to know the geography of the company's area. There were engines named after country houses, castles, manors, halls, and so on. And there were actually 3 locomotives named after local buildings: Hillingdon Court, Ickenham Hall, and Useley Grange. So I learnt about the industries served by the railway and the areas of countryside and coast where the GWR operated holiday services. On one occasion, I was sitting by myself on the grass embankment next to either signal box, and it was a quiet time. The signalman called out and asked if I would like to join him in the box. I just sat and watched him do his job. What a privilege it was. I'm sure he would have been reprimanded if caught. Us boys would sometimes try and get into an engine shed and collect all the numbers there in one go. This was known as bunking a shed, but more often than not, we got thrown out. A trip to Swindon Works, the main engineering depot of the GWR, was usually booked through the company's offices. The fact that it was wartime proved particularly interesting because some Victorian engines that might have been scrapped were kept running, quaint as they were. And in early 1944, the number of trucks on the goods trains increased notably. Of course, we later realised that this was part of the build-up to D-Day, as the Allied armies assembled their invasion force to set foot on the continent again. My happy memories of those days remain. Getting smuts in the eyes, painful. Putting a penny on a rail and collecting it flattened after the train had passed over it. But the beauty, power, and life of a great locomotive remain with me. Diesel and electric trains all seem dull and lifeless in comparison. I enjoy travelling now on preserved railways, but to a nostalgic collector, just looking at the photographs of old engines is enough to bring back the enjoyment and enthusiasm of collecting train numbers.
Thanks, Ken. You don't see train spotters so much these days, do you?
No, well, you see, as I said there, the other types of locomotives don't have the same attraction. A great big powerful steam engine has got life and energy, and there's something wonderful about it that you don't get on these other quiet, silent things.
Well, thanks for that, Ken. And I'm glad you're back after a short break for illness, and hopefully we'll catch up in March for some more
Yes,
chats.
indeed,
Yes,
Steve.
historic chats.
Right.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Yeah, bye for now. Thanks, Ken.